I'm Jim Collison, and this is the Clifton Strengths Podcast, Season 2, recorded on March 10th, 2023. In this Clifton Strengths podcast series, we look at the Clifton Strengths for Leaders report, one theme at a time, and today's theme is discipline. If you're listening live, love to have you join us in chat. There's a link right above me to it. Or if you're listening to questions after the fact, you can always send us your questions, coaching@gallup.com. Dr. Jaclynn Robinson is our host today. She works as a senior learning and development consultant. Join me for Season 1 of the Clifton Strengths podcast, where we looked at well-being at work, one theme at a time. Jaclynn, always great to have you. Welcome back.
Thank you. I just realized, try saying well-being at work fast. That could be a tongue twister.
That can be, well, those with discipline would slow down enough to get it right. We're talking about, I don't have that. I have activator and arranger. I always want to move fast. But we are talking about discipline today. Kick us off with that. When we say discipline, what do we mean?
If you have discipline high, you enjoy routine and structure. Your world is best described by the order you create.
I think sometimes we think that only discipline has that. And I think that, listen, there are people who don't have it that crave routine and structure. I like it. Doesn't mean I'm best in it, all the time. Doesn't mean it makes me successful all the time. But so I hear from people all the time. This is one of those strengths envy ones where people, I wish I had higher discipline. Super low for me, but I still like it, and I've learned to appreciate it. We're talking about it in the context of a leadership role, right? In this Clifton Strengths for Leader report. So what's the power of this theme in a leadership role? Talk a little bit about that.
Their need for structure as a leader brings a lot of stability into the workforce because they're that leadership that's guiding people. They've got employees moving towards a course of action with expectations and timelines in place and deadlines. And in addition to that, when change or chaos occurs, this leader can be counted on to reset and find a new predictable pathway through. So it's like pause, reset. Okay, I've got a plan. I think they create a lot of structure and stability.
Yeah, talk about it. It comes out of the executing domain. Talk a little bit about how do you see that in working with people? Flesh that out just a little bit more. What does that look like? Or hold on, Mark would want me to say flesh that out a little bit more. Would you do that? Because it's not flesh, it's
flesh. Well, if I'm thinking of this individual at the leadership level, then when they're in those strategic meetings, they can keep the agenda tight. This is what we've got set. Let's make sure we're covering it. They're the folks that can help just streamline ideas or initiatives to make sure that it's going to be tackled through and through. So little unlike focus, where we think more about what's the goal we're trying to achieve here, that person with high discipline can help shape the path, make sure timelines are set, make sure each leader might know what their communication message is or what their responsibilities are, and just make sure that everyone's really running like a well-oiled machine.
Yeah.
And then when we think about how that starts to cascade down, employees are now streamlined on their communication and aligned because that leaders help shape the other leaders around them.
Yeah. And I think, and again, important to remind folks, they're good at this and successful at it, and they do it every time. Like with that, folks with high discipline, there are I have moments like this, but they're not always successful, and I don't do it all the time. Right. And so great to hear. I love this theme because I love talking about these themes that are low for me, because it really, it gives me some insight on how to lean into them with others. As we think about others, how could this theme lead others? Give us maybe a few more specific examples of how it could lead others.
They can set clear standards and expectations, for one. So those within their sphere of influence have role clarity, timelines, and they also have the resources they need to make sure that they can carry out their role with efficiency and accountability.
Man, you're using some words that are just foreign to me. Accountability.
I saw you pausing there. I'm like, he's thinking.
I was like,
He's
And
noodling on it.
it probably shares some talents with command too. I hear a little bit of that, right? All these executing themes in
Yes.
here, right? And
That's a really good call
as we
out.
actually, as we think about any of those by domain, and you start hearing some of those similarities in them,
Yes,
you think it sounds like it. Let's
that's
flip
true.
that. In the report, we talk about helps, but we've got some hinders in there as well. How could this theme hinder the leadership
Yes.
of others?
When it comes to an unclear path ahead, so when the path changes, and it's necessary to make some quick adjustments, this leader could struggle. So, with self awareness and a moment of reflection, then they can put a new plan in place and move forward. But they do tend to need that think time to just pause and go, wait a minute. Let me reset mentally and figure out where we're
Yeah.
going. And this is where really being open to the creative thoughts and ideas or strategies of other people can really help them as well, whether it's a
Hmm.
direct report or a fellow colleague.
I think I'd add a little bit to that of understanding that everybody's not built like you
Yes.
are, right? And
Yes.
this is one of those where it's easy. I think it's so visible at times
Mhm.
that I'm either there or I'm not to say, well, if you would just buckle down, if you would just do it the same way twice, Jim,
Yes.
right? If you,
Yes.
did I, was that my example? Because that's right. I mean, in I think that it can get demotivating to others if
Yes.
it's taken without understanding, right?
Yeah.
If you're just saying, if you adjust, so if you find yourself high discipline, folks, if you find yourself using that phrase, well, if you would just check yourself at that point, right?
If you would just
Right.
stick to this schedule, this routine,
Yeah.
that can
Yeah.
feel so suffocating for people that need freedom to think or freedom to explore their workplace in the way that suits them, like high adaptability. They're going to be at their best when they're reacting, not when you're trying to force them to be proactive.
Yeah.
So I'd love that. I think that's another key hindrance that we would see.
We're spending some time thinking about this in the context of the four needs, right? So, hope, stability, compassion, and trust. Where do you think discipline fits in that structure? What does it provide?
See stability right off the bat.
Yeah.
We're going to create some order, some structure, even when there's change. There's going to be some predictability that helps you feel like you can anchor down. And to that degree, that I think brings compassion, because if that person high in discipline is disconcerted by the change or the movement, they're going to want to make sure that they maybe over communicate or make sure that they get that structure in place pretty quickly so people can feel more secure in their role or what the road ahead looks like.
Hmm.
And I think that brings trust for sure, because
Yeah.
it's okay. We trust that this person is going to have a plan.
Yeah, even for me, it even brings hope at times, knowing that like when there's chaos around and things are falling off my plate,
Hmm.
that those with high discipline, chances are they got a better shot at it than me. So I just
Hmm.
cling to them. Help me. I'm dying here.
Clinging
What
like it's a
yeah.
life raft.
What do we need to do? Like, can especially in those where it's consistent processes that need to happen the same way all the time. Those do exist, right? And
Yes.
so that brings great hope to me, and so I always appreciate that. This season, we're spending some time thinking about this idea of report dynamics. What would happen? We have these three
Mm.
role-based reporters, right? Clifton Strengths for leaders. We're focusing this year. Clifton Strengths for managers, and then Clifton Strengths for sales. And so let's think about this. If we took kind of those two ideas of leaders and sales and put them together, how would we think about that, Jaclyn?
These are so fun to start thinking about
They
how
are
these
kind of fun,
combine
aren't they?
together, by the
Yeah.
way. So, with discipline, if you've got a sales leader with high discipline, then team members can count on them to help them create a sales strategy or territory schedule that's going to be most efficient in meeting the needs of their clients. And then I think even beyond that, this leader can help them think about how to scope out their day so they can effectively respond to emails, hold follow-up calls, complete administration, and even, walk into their accounts. So I love thinking of this person as that go-to, that thought partner, so to
Mhm.
speak, to help them think about how to maximize their day. Little M,
Yeah.
but they can certainly create that high return on investment through the structure that they can help this person craft.
Taking that me to we concept and saying, okay, I've been successful with these things, but now knowing you and your
Mm-hmm.
sales talents, how can
Yes.
we create some structure around you that makes it work for you in this situation? I think
Yes.
that's the growth in this, is to, as a sales
Yes.
leader or as a leader in sales, to say, we got to follow up. How are we gonna? Because you have to in sales, you have to
Yes.
follow up or you starve. So how are we going to follow up? This is what's worked for me, but let's figure out a way to make it work for you based on who you are, right? Maybe you need
Yes.
automation, or maybe it just needs to be someone else helping you do that, or whatever, right? Filling in. I don't know.
Yes.
Would you add anything to that?
No, I love that. It's I think what a blessing that is for the newer sales folks too that are trying to
Mhm.
figure out how to manage their territory, especially if it's large. Well,
Yeah.
let's think about where you might be on a Monday. How do you want to manage those accounts that might be closer in that region? Or if you're waiting to go see a prospect or a client, to your point, is that a good time for you to do some admin and respond to emails in your car while you wait? So, yeah, I think that was well said.
Yeah. Well, we're going through. We're currently it's March of 2023. Folks will
Hmm.
listen to this much later, but we're going through some process to make some things more efficient for our certification recertification process for our coaches. And I consider part of the sales process the follow up that we do to certification. That's just as important of the communication we do. And now I have really, because I have really low discipline, I have to really lean on partners in this
Hmm.
who will ensure, hey, I can keep track of all of the pieces, but I need to hand those off in the sales process to others
Hmm.
and say, I need you to do this for me and make sure this gets done right. And so that is not just, when we think about sales, it's just not widgets and licenses and product. It might be it might be promises made in a sales cycle to be fulfilled after the sales. That's
Hmm.
just as important in sales. Okay, this is not a sales podcast. When we think about sorry, I don't know
But we
why.
were talking sales.
Yeah,
We were
we were
talking
talking
sales.
sales. At least I was close. As a leader, thinking then with the leaders report and the manager report, how might those two work
Hmm.
together?
Well, the individuals on this leaders team likely feel a lot of stability just within their day to day. There's that steady cadence that's happening. And I think that lends itself to trust and reliability on the team. Team members know that meetings are going to start and end on time with that set agenda. They know what goals they're striving towards, what timelines necessary to meet those goals. And I think what can elevate this leader's management style is to really have an awareness, and you mentioned this earlier, of how individuals manage their calendar and day to day tasks with success. And they might prefer less structure and more adaptability. So, really starting to kind of individualize and know what it is that helps this person be successful can help them be an even more effective leader. They might not want all that structure, but it's great to have from that, maybe, that collective standpoint when it comes to
Mhm.
team meetings or goal setting.
Yeah, it gets me thinking about this idea of having adaptable structure and
Ooh.
structured adaptability, right? They both have to coexist together and they can
Mhm.
look a little bit different. And based on the needs, I think for this leader manager of structuring this in for those who are a little more free flowing, of figuring out
Yeah.
ways to add structure for accountability. And for those who have high structure and accountability, how do we make it so they can adapt to the situation, right? Because we have to do both.
Mhm.
It's not always, it's almost never one way. It's always both. In I shouldn't say always. That's probably most of the time. A lot of the time, we need both, right? And I think a good leader manager is constantly thinking how to create that structured adaptability or adaptable structure to make it work. So, Jaclyn, as we kind of wrap this up, any final thoughts on discipline?
That was good. I feel like you just found some new trademarks
Ooh.
with those phrases.
I was channeling my, since we talked about him earlier, I was channeling my inner Kurt Leesfeld on that. That's
Good.
something he would have said. So, and he might have, maybe I just stole it from him, but final thoughts.
Yeah, so those with discipline, I think that, you've got a lot that you can offer teams and colleagues in terms of making sure that people feel like they are tackling what they need to for the day or within that meeting itself. And then it's also that caveat of remembering that some people need freedom to think, freedom to ideate, freedom to um, manage their day to day with maybe less structure and a little bit more adaptability and fluidity. So, with that, Godspeed.
Good luck.
Good luck.
With that, we'll remind everyone to take full advantage of all the resources we have available now in Gallup Access. If you head out to gallup.com/CliftonStrengths, sign in. And actually, we have a resource area, upper menu, upper left-hand corner, drop it down, choose resources. There's a search bar in there. You can put a theme in. Everything we've done around this theme available for you there. And just a great way to get some additional learning and some resources. Stay up to date with all the webcasts by following us at gallup.eventbrite.com. Join us on any social platform by searching Clifton Strengths, and we want to thank you for joining us today if you're listening live. And then make sure you like and subscribe so you never miss an episode. Thanks for listening. If you're listening live, stay around for a little bit of the mid show. With that, we'll say goodbye, everybody.